Hey guys, so today we are filming in my bedroom. I did a whole bedroom makeover and thought we'd film in here, you know, instead of in the living room. Why not? So in my last video, I talked about how Scary Stories was rated PG-13 and why I think sometimes that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of horror fans tend to think that, oh, if there's no like lots of blood and gore and adult themes and things like that, then it's not going to be meant for me as an adult horror viewer. And I just think that is so far from the truth, and that we should still not be discouraged by a PG-13 rating, because oftentimes they rely on other forms of scares in order to attract the viewers, right? So a lot of you wanted to see my favorite PG-13 rated horror movies, so that's what today's video is going to be about. Firstly, I want to thank our sponsor for today's video, Shudder. Shudder is an online streaming service of all things horror, thriller, and suspense. So you can stream completely ad-free on multiple devices, including your phones, computers, Xbox, all for $5.99 a month or $56.99 a year. It's like the cheapest streaming service that exists, and it's in our genre. They just came out with a new original series called Nosferatu. That might sound familiar. It is based, of course, on the book by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son. So it stars Zachary Quinto from American Horror Story. I'm really excited to watch that personally, but Shudder has tons of shows and movies and original content to choose from. So just make sure you go to shudder.com. I will have a link in the description below, and use my code POSSESS30 for a free 30-day trial. So PG-13 movies, a lot of times they are supernatural. So I'm a little bit biased because supernatural movies are typically my favorite type of horror, but because they do have a PG-13 rating, oftentimes they are the supernatural movies because they don't need the R rating to make the movie scary. So because that's my favorite genre of horror, I am a little bit biased for a lot of the movies on this list. Also, I have 16 movies on this list. I didn't want to do just 10. I wanted to share as many as possible because a lot of them are popular and you've probably heard of them, but hopefully at least one or two are on here that maybe will surprise you that it's rated PG-13, and maybe you didn't know it was rated PG-13, because let me tell you, some of these are really, really scary. Also, I think this goes without saying that because these are PG-13 rated movies, they are also great starter movies for those just getting into horror, or if you have like young ones in your life that you want to introduce to horror. Except maybe the last movie, because that one is like really, first movie and the last movie on this list are genuinely very terrifying. So just, okay, so the last disclaimer before we get into the list, sorry there's so much in this intro, is that the genre line is a little bit blurred between horror and thriller, but just go with it because they're all kind of creepy in their own way. So, okay, first up, I have to talk about my favorite movie of all time, favorite horror movie of all time, and that is The Ring. You guys knew this was going to be on the list because I mentioned it in my last video. I use this as an example of a PG-13 rated movie that is genuinely scary. Like, this is one that still bothers me to this day, but I've seen it so many times that I'm a little bit desensitized to the movie by now, but it still is a very creepy premise and visuals are scary. To me, The Ring is just a classic movie and will always be in my heart. It's one of the first horror movies I ever watched. I don't even know how old I was, but I was very young and it really scared me. I could not watch the scene with the face. Next up, we have Mama. This is another one that is one of my favorites. It's one that really scared me in theaters. I went and saw it twice. Guillermo del Toro is an executive producer on it, and Javier Botet plays Mama. So there's a lot of elements in this movie that I love. And to me, what is the most scary in horror is visuals like maybe Samara and the faces of the people that she kills, and then people like Mama, like characters like that to me are so much scarier than like a slasher with lots of gore. Like, gore is bothersome in a way that's like gross, you know, but there's something about the supernatural elements of horror that is just so effective for me. So to me, Mama is just a visually stunning movie. The way Javier Botet moves his body is just very creepy, and to me is very scary. The only issue I have with Mama is how much we actually see her. So by the end of it, it's like we're not too terrified of her. Next up, we have Woman in Black starring Daniel Radcliffe. This is one that he filmed, I think, shortly after Harry Potter, and I think this really exhibited that he is not a typecast character and that he can actually play like multiple different types of characters, and his career has been amazing to watch. I think he's an incredible actor and I'm so proud of him. But Woman in Black is one of those supernatural movies that is very much about atmosphere, and it is, again, a gorgeous movie. The setting is beautiful. beautiful. It is a period piece, and the house is just so haunting, and the imagery and the fog and just like all of it is just so pretty and haunting and horrifying. So the next one maybe will be a surprise to some of you, and also includes technically 3 movies. All of the Insidious movies are rated PG-13. Now that's not too shocking because again, it is kind of more supernatural. There's not a lot of like body gore or things like that that would require an R rating, so I don't know if that's shocking to you to know that all the Insidious ones are PG-13. Now I love a good Insidious movie, don't get me wrong. I do think at this point they're a little bit overhyped, and I don't know, I feel like they are good movies and good starter movies because there are those scary visuals, but it's not too scary, I think. But it is one of those more modern movies that typically rely a little bit on jump scares, and so there is that. I don't think I need to get too into Insidious because we all know about Insidious by now. Next up is The Last Exorcism. This one, not of Emily Rose, but The Last Exorcism. Although The Exorcism of Emily Rose is also PG-13 if you wanted to watch that one too. I think this is another movie that's really well done. The acting is very good and the atmosphere is really cool, and it's a subtle horror. It is found footage style, but I don't think that that takes away from it. I know some people aren't a fan of it, but I would give this one a try because it's a simple movie. It's not a lot of plot or anything, not a lot of fancy camera work or visuals or anything like that, but it is still haunting and creepy, and the girl is a contortionist, so. But I do think The Last Exorcism is a bit underrated and not a lot of people talk about it, and I think it's really good. The second one, not so good. I own it. I own both of them, but the second one's not that great. Next up we have 1408, again a movie I have watched so many times. It is of course done by the original story is done by Stephen King. It was actually a short story. 1408 is of course about kind of like a haunted hotel room where there's been a lot of deaths in the hotel room, and this guy is a horror writer and he wants to stay there to write about it because he writes about haunted locations, but he himself does not believe in hauntings or ghosts or anything like that. So the story is really good. It stars John Cusack, which is one of my favorite actors, which is so random. 1408 has kind of the typical Stephen King vibes of very weird stuff going on and just strange. Like it's just a weird movie, but it all comes together and I think it's really a cool movie. Next up is one that would probably be a psychological thriller, but to me is definitely a horror movie because it is supernatural, and that is The Others. This stars Nicole Kidman, and again, this is like an older movie, but I feel like it's not talked about a lot anymore, and it is such a good movie. I think the strongest part about The Others is the plot and the storyline, which is kind of why it's more thriller. I think there are horror elements in there, but it's kind of about a haunted house. Next we have another found footage movie of Cloverfield. This one I think was super hyped when it first came out. Everyone was obsessed with it. And this one is, would it be supernatural? It's not supernatural, right? It's like creature feature almost, like a monster movie, I guess. I think a lot of us have seen Cloverfield by now. There is some body gore in it, so just keep that in mind. Not all of these movies are free of gore, so there is a little bit in Cloverfield, but it is still PG-13. A lot of people complained in the theater about the shakiness of it, so if you're sensitive to motion sickness or whatever, make sure you are prepared if you want to watch this movie maybe on a little screen or something where you can look away if the motion is bothering you, because it is a very shaky movie. Next up is a movie that you know by now. If I have a chance to put it on a list, it's going on a list, and that is The Village. I just love rubbing it in your guys' face. I don't know why people have an issue with the fact that I love The Village so much, but I know a lot of you do too, so I'm not the only one. Again, The Village, more psychological thriller. That was another argument a lot of people had in the comment section of certain videos where I talked about The Village, is that they are saying it is not a horror, and it's really not. It's, I don't know, it's a subtle thriller, but I think it has horror elements. It is an M. Night Shyamalan film, so there's like a big twist in it. But again, the horror elements are very subtle, but they're there, and I think it makes it really good. And then by the time you see the end and the twist and everything, it's like mind blown for me. Maybe not for most of you, I don't know. Next we have The Sixth Sense. This is a movie that messed me up as a child. Got to me, man. Obviously, we know the premise of this kid who sees ghosts, right? And the ghosts that he sees are so scary. See, ghosts for me are so horrifying, even though I don't believe in them in real life. I don't know why supernatural is so effective for me when I don't believe in supernatural anything. But this movie made me scared to sleep at night, and I don't know why. It is just so haunting and scary. Like the ghosts that he sees are so, there's one in particular, but I'm not gonna say it because I don't want to spoil it, but the fact that this is rated PG-13, I think it's a really scary movie. Forget like the twist in the end or whatever. We all know what that is by now, but the actual horror parts of the movie are so good. And next we have Disturbia. This is obviously more of a thriller, less of a horror. There's a little bit of horror elements in it, I guess, towards the end. There's like the suspense buildup and everything. It stars Shia LaBeouf, and you know, I don't think he's bad in it. I think the acting's pretty good. It is kind of more of a cheesier movie, I would say, but also I think a little underrated for like when it came out. I think a lot of people weren't really talking about it that much, and it is one that I really enjoy. I recently just bought it on DVD. Next one is an oldie but a goodie, and it is the cheesiest movie, probably. Is it the cheesiest? I don't know. We got another one on here. This is pretty cheesy. Stay Alive. Yes. With Frankie Muniz. Yes. There's something about this movie that I love. I crave rewatching this movie all the time, and I don't know what it is. It is such a cheesy movie, but I love it. It's about a video game where if you die in the game, you die in real life. So how you die in the game is also how you die in real life. And I don't know, I really like the premise. Not realistic, obviously, at all. But yeah, PG-13, so has the same director as The Boy, which was not really a great movie in my opinion. But so, you know, it's one of those where it's like it's an easy, quick watch. It is a very short movie. Just throw it on, and it's a fun one to just watch with some friends because it is cheesy. Next we have a classic, and that is Krampus. Can you believe Krampus is only PG-13? See, that is proof. Well, I don't know if you like Krampus or not, but I know a lot of people love Krampus, including myself, and it is a classic Christmas movie, of course, now, for me anyway. And I think it's surprising that it's PG-13 because it proves that you can have an amazing horror film. It stars Toni Collette, she's amazing and meant for horror, even though it's not her favorite type of work to do. But you don't need an R rating for an amazing acted visual horror movie. Again, another movie that I can never resist putting on a list is Haunting of Molly Hartley. I've talked about this movie so much. I feel like people associate me with The Haunting of Molly Hartley now, which is so funny because it's not my favorite movie of all time, but it is my favorite like guilty pleasure or no shame movie that I just rewatch all the time. It's obvious why this would be PG-13. There's not a lot going on in this plot. That's why I said that Stay Alive might not be the cheesiest movie, because we got Haunting of Molly Hartley on here, which is pretty cheesy. All right, we only got two more. I saved the scariest one for last. Kind of the first one's really scary, obviously, but I saved the last one as the scariest. So the next one is The Haunting in Connecticut. This is another one I don't see a lot of people talk about that much. I own it. I think it's really cool. The visuals are awesome. Again, it's a haunted house type thing. The story's a little bit cheesy, and a lot of it's kind of cheesy. It's not the best movie on this list by any means, but it is a good one if you've never seen it to get into, because it's supernatural, and I don't know, it's a little bit earlier 2000s, I think, so it came out a while ago, but still worth giving a watch if you haven't yet. The last one, I think some people are gonna laugh when I say that this is a very scary movie, but I want you to watch this and tell me that you have to have an R rating in order for a movie to be scary, because this movie F's with a lot of people. The Fourth Kind. The Fourth Kind is PG-13, and it is so effective for me. Granted, I love a good alien storyline as far as like horror goes, because that is horrifying to me to think about. I think The Fourth Kind is incredible and amazing. It stars Mila Jovovich, and she's great, and I don't want to give too much away about the plot if you haven't seen it yet, but it is older, so I feel like a lot of you have already seen it already. Oh my gosh, the visuals are horrifying. The sounds that you hear in that movie are like, I can hear them now in my brain, and they just stick with you, and the visuals stick with you, and it is so scary. So I feel like that is a great example that you don't need an R rating. I think a lot of these movies are great examples, so you don't need an R rating. Like I said, a lot of them are more thriller because there isn't like a lot of horror in it, but there are so many on this list that are genuinely horrifying, at least to me. It's all my opinion, of course. There are so many more PG-13 horror movies. These are just my top 16 that I selected. and the ones that I would recommend the most if you are getting into horror or you just want some stuff to watch. I know a lot of these are well known already, so sorry if you were looking for something new. Please feel free to leave your favorite PG-13 rated horror movies down below in the comments, and make sure again to check out Shudder.com and use my code for a free 30 days. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.